Good morning, madam and my fellow friends. Today we are going to present about biotechnology application in yeast-based process and also product which is alcohol industry and also bread making. I am Silvina, Doctor of Leukemia. My metric number is 23DBT18F2007 and my friend is Danusha, Doctor of Malika Vasagan. Her metric number is 23DBT18F2030. Yeast. Yeast are recognized as a foodstuff since 4000 century before Christ, and it distributed as a natural which is fruit skin. And this metabolize sugar into ethanol and also carbon dioxide. It can be used as other sources which is amino acid, organic acid, and also fatty acid and more. And also it can be used as brewing, wine making, distilling or distilling and also baking. Yeast are heterotrophic organism and also unicell fungi. More than 35,000 of fungi species and there are only 350 species which is 39 general are accepted as a yeast. Its commercially include Saccharomyces candida and also Clevoromyces, and the commonly used was Saccharomyces. This is the journal that based on this journal we get all the information about the introduction of yeast. The name of the journal is Yeast Biotechnology Diversity and Application Journal, which is written by Mustafa Turk. Application of yeast biotechnology. There are some of the example of application of yeast biotechnology. First is environmental biotechnology, biocontrol, biomedical research, and fundamental biological research, heterologous protein production, biocatalyzed, biofuel, food and feed ingredient, and also traditional yeast fermentation. And this application we refer from Yeast Biotechnology Diversity and Application Journal, which is written by Mustafa Turki also. Bread making. Definition of bread making is baker yeast is a commercial preparation and also considers to dry cells of one or more strain of the fungi Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And the properties of yeast bread making is it is not inhaled by propionate, which commonly add to a baker good like a bread dough to inhibit mold development and bacteria growth. Few types of yeast. Firstly, active dry yeast, which is a normal yeast, and also instant yeast. It is the yeast is specially formulated to active more quickly, and the rapid rise is also similar to instant yeast. And lastly, fresh yeast, which is a wet compaction yeast that is ideal for many baking applications. Process of bread baking. There are 7 steps of bread making process. First is mixing. Mixing means to functional to eventually distribute the various ingredients and allow the development of the protein, which is gluten, network to give the best bread possibility. And the following step is fermentation or rising. Once the bread is mixed, then it will left to rise to ferment. And the third step is kneading, which means any large gas hole that may have formed during rising are developed by kneading. The following step is modeling into loaf shape, modeling the dough into the desired loaf shape. And the following step is rising. During the final rising, all the loaf filled with the more bubbles of gas, and once it has proceeded for enough, they are transferred to oven for baking. And the 6th step is baking. The loaf is then placed in the preheated oven to bake. Such a high heat to kill all the yeast that step of the process to rising and growth, and the last step is cooling and also skeleting and wrapping. The whole loaf is cooled to about 35 Celsius before the slitting, and wrapping can occur without damage the loaf. From this journal, we get all the information of bread making. The title of the journal is Yeast, it is type and role of fermentation during bread making process. It's a literature review, and we get all the information from this journal.
A very good morning to Madam Hazwani and my fellow friends. I am Danisha Manikawasan from DBT5B and my metric card number is 23DBT18F2030. So now I'll be presenting about the alcohol industry. Alcoholic beverage is a drink that contains 3 to 60% of alcohol in it. There are two types of alcoholic beverage. One is the wine and the other one is beer. So first we'll look at wine. Wine is an alcoholic beverage that made from fermented grapes or other fruits. Based on the journal included here, the natural chemical balance of grapes allows it to ferment without the addition of sugars, acids, enzymes, water or other nutrients. Yeast will then consume the sugars in the grapes and convert it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Next, we will look at the steps of making winemaking process. So the first step in making wine is harvesting. It is the grapes that contain all the required esters, tannins and acids that make delicious wine. The moment at which grapes are picked from the vineyard is what actually determines the sweetness, flavor and acidity of the wine. Along with the traditional tasting method, deciding when to harvest the grapes also requires a fair bit of science. It's very important to make sure that the sweetness and acidity of the grapes are in perfect balance while picking the grapes, and not to forget weather also plays a very important role in the harvesting process. Fresh grape juice, which is the outcome of the crushing process and contains seeds, solids, skins of the grapes. The next step is the fermentation. Crushing and pressing is followed by the fermentation process. Must naturally starts fermenting within 6 to 12 hours when wild yeast is added to it. But many of winemakers add cultured yeast to the must to predict the final outcome and ensure consistency. This fermentation process continues until all the sugar is transformed into alcohol in the production of dry wine. The total fermentation process can take about a week to a month or even more. After fermentation, the next step is the clarification. This is the process in which tannins, proteins and dead yeast is removed from the wine. For this, wine is transferred into stainless steel tanks or oak barrels. Filtration or fining process is used for clarification. For clarifying, substance are also added to the result of the fining processes. The stage of this process is aging and bottling of the wine. The wine can be instantly bottled or winemaker can give additional aging to the wine. For aging, the wine is transferred into oak barrels, stainless steel tanks or bottles. Next, we will move on to the beer making process. So, beer is produced by the saccharification of starch and fermentation. There are two types of beer. One is top fermented beer and the other one is bottom fermented. And the difference between these two types of beers are strain of yeast and fermentation method. The main ingredients of beer is water, barley, malt, yeast, and also hops. So we will continue with the beer making process. So the first step is malting. The purpose of malting is to develop amylase and protease in the grain. These enzymes produced by the germination of barley. These enzymes are able to break down carbohydrate and protein in the grain. Next is the milling step. The barley malt is ground until it becomes coarse flour. The purpose of milling is to expose particles, the malt, to the hydrolytic effects of malt enzymes. This process allows the starch release from barley malt. Next step is the mushing. The purpose of mushing is to extract as much as the possible portion of the malt.